What had just been revealed that shattered a cultural icon on the spot? What testimony, what evidence could bring down a 2-decade-long empire in an instant? And why, after years of being seen as untouchable, was Diddy unable to remain standing when the truth came to light? The answers lie in what unfolded over the previous 10 days, secrets the American entertainment industry had long tried to bury. 1. The life sentence that shook the nation. The atmosphere inside the Manhattan federal courtroom turned to stone as Judge Arun Subramanian delivered the verdict: life imprisonment, no parole. 6 simple words, yet they severed the past, present, and future of Diddy Combs, a man who once stood at the top of the American music industry. Once hailed by Forbes as the first hip-hop billionaire, today he is no longer a mogul, no longer a cultural icon. He is a convicted felon. His fall was not just legal, it unfolded before the public eye. A courtroom security officer recounted, "I was no more than 5 steps away from him. When he heard the words 'no parole,' his eyes went blank and he collapsed. We had to catch him to prevent him from hitting his head on the podium." That moment needed no further commentary. A man who had grown used to controlling the world could no longer control his own legs. Then came a piercing scream from the right side of the gallery. Delilah Combs, one of Diddy's 18-year-old twin daughters, was overcome with emotion. She clutched her sister's hand, eyes red, sobbing without sound. Nearby, Janice Combs, Diddy's mother, sat frozen, lips trembling. She tried to stand but collapsed back into her seat. A medic rushed to check her blood pressure and wheeled her out. Meanwhile, the rest of the family could only bow their heads as tears fell silently. Diddy's attorney, Brian Steele, erupted in anger. He would not let the judge step down without voicing his objection. "We object to this verdict. This is a gross violation of the right to due process," he shouted, while his assistant tried to pull him back. But by then, no one in the room paid him any attention. Every eye was on Diddy, the man who had just been sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars. The sentence came after 10 consecutive days of trial, citing 63 civil files, hundreds of digital evidence items, and testimony from 11 key witnesses. Among them, Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex-girlfriend and a singer under his Bad Boy Records label, was considered the key that unlocked the prison door. Prosecutors argued that the network of freak-offs, forced filming, and interstate parties was clear evidence of human trafficking and organized criminal activity. Another disturbing detail that shook public opinion was a message extracted from Diddy's phone, sent to a close assistant in 2017, "Take care of the body in room 603. Clean it up before sunrise." While the prosecution couldn't identify the victim referenced in the message, they concluded it was one of many signs pointing to Diddy's dangerous level of control over those around him. An FBI insider shared after the trial, "We've never seen someone in the entertainment industry maintain such a sophisticated model of control over others for nearly 2 decades." What made the sentence especially harsh was the systemic nature of the criminal enterprise Diddy was accused of leading. According to the indictment, Diddy didn't act alone. He had a group of enforcers, bodyguards, assistants, managers, and even a few celebrities who had appeared at his parties. Some testimonies named these individuals, but for now, only Diddy has been federally indicted. In his sentencing remarks, Judge Subramanian emphasized, "No amount of wealth, fame, or influence justifies stripping others of their dignity. Mr. Combs lived like a king on the backs of others. Now it is time he faces the consequences of his actions." Many are left wondering, how could someone like Diddy, once a symbol of black success in America, fall so far? The answer likely doesn't lie in a single day, a single year, or a single case. It is the result of unchecked power, unrestrained wealth, and relationships concealed by money and fear. And today, that mask has fallen. Stay with us as we continue uncovering the crimes brought to light in the courtroom. 2. Revelations from the FBI's classified files. As the trial concluded and the media swarmed around attorneys and witnesses, a source from within the FBI quietly opened a darker, far more terrifying door, the organized system that Diddy Combs had built over nearly 2 decades. One that functioned much like a modern-day mafia embedded at the heart of the American entertainment industry. In a leaked internal report released just after the trial, one phrase appeared repeatedly: unofficial scale, professional structure, network-level operations. These are not terms typically used to describe a businessman or an artist. But in Diddy's case, every detail was documented, from luxury villas rented under other people's names, private jet trips that left no passenger records, to encrypted email chains between him and a select group of loyal staff tasked with coordinating private events. Investigators described Diddy's system as a control complex where everything from guest lists, stimulants, video recordings, to entertainment partners was meticulously planned. A 40-page report detailed how he used properties in Los Angeles, Miami, New York, and even the Caribbean to host lavish parties that appeared glamorous on the surface but were actually the staging ground for appalling misconduct on a massive scale. One former logistics employee, now under witness protection, testified that they were once ordered to prepare a room fitted with hidden cameras behind mirrors, remotely controlled lighting systems, and unlabeled drugs stored in a mini-fridge. This person couldn't recount everything that took place on those nights, but described the experience as working for an underground world rather than a music label. The deeper agents dug into the records, the clearer it became, Diddy had not acted alone. Around him existed a web of people who played roles like coordinator, information filter, scene cleaner, and fallout handler. There were assistants tasked with arranging off-the-record schedules. Others booked flights and hotel rooms under fake identities. Still more were responsible for wiping electronic devices whenever an incident occurred. They wore no uniforms, no badges, but functioned as a precisely trained, well-oiled machine. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was a hard drive seized from the Holy Hills estate in California. Initially believed to contain only business documents, it was found, after decryption, to include hidden camera footage showing scenes of coercion, voyeurism, and forced participation in sexual acts. Many videos were hours long, named with cryptic codes, but matched the testimonies of Cassie Ventura and other witnesses. Digital forensic experts confirmed there were no signs of editing. What horrified investigators most was how well hidden the entire system had been for years. Every employee who had worked for Diddy, from security guards to stylists, chauffeurs to personal aides, was required to sign airtight non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, with breach penalties amounting to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some were even directly threatened. One anonymous witness claimed that after merely mentioning the desire to quit and confiding in a friend about things they'd seen, they were stopped on a highway by 3 unknown men and warned to stay silent if they didn't want their family to get hurt. The FBI had been suspicious of Diddy since the early 2010s, but a lack of direct evidence forced them to piece together a case from fragments, disjointed tips, testimonies, murky transactions, and unusual financial activity. Only when Cassie Ventura filed a civil suit in 2023 and submitted video evidence from the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016 did the momentum shift. That footage was the key piece that allowed the FBI to obtain search warrants, unlock digital devices, and begin reconstructing the operational blueprint of the entire network. An internal FBI report concluded, "This is not merely an individual with abusive tendencies. This is an organization with mafia characteristics, operating across cities and countries with strategies for silencing victims, erasing evidence, and suffocating opposition through money and psychological threats." Where the world once saw Diddy as the king of hip-hop, federal investigators saw him as a crime boss within the entertainment world, a man who masked his actions with fame, used music as a veil, and leveraged the spotlight to obscure the machinery of darkness running beneath. These revelations have forced not only the public, but the entire music industry to reflect. Who worked with him? Who knew but stayed silent? How many victims remain unnamed? And if it weren't for Cassie and dozens of women who found the courage to speak out, would these truths ever have come to light? When asked whether others might still be implicated, a veteran FBI agent on the task force offered only one sentence: "This is just the first chapter." As the legal battles intensified, Sean Combs found himself not only fighting to preserve his freedom but also scrambling to protect the empire he had built over decades. His influence extended far beyond music. Combs had investments in fashion, media, hospitality, and spirits. His Ciroc vodka brand partnership with Diageo had elevated him to the upper echelons of celebrity entrepreneurs, while his Revolt Media network positioned him as a cultural gatekeeper in black-owned media. These were not simply side projects. They were foundational pillars of his post-music legacy. However, as allegations mounted, corporate partners began to distance themselves. Diageo quietly re-evaluated its long-standing relationship with Combs, and whispers within the media industry suggested that even Revolt might face internal scrutiny over its association with the embattled mogul. For many in the entertainment world, the unraveling of Diddy's reputation felt like the crumbling of an institution. The same man who had once danced through Times Square in glossy music videos, who had hosted opulent parties that were the stuff of legend, was now at the center of some of the most disturbing allegations to ever rock the hip-hop community. And yet, this moment also triggered a collective reckoning within the industry. How had someone with such proximity to so many people in power managed to operate unchecked for so long? Industry veterans began speaking more openly. Former collaborators and protégés shared cryptic messages on social media, with some alluding to a long-standing culture of silence and protectionism within the circles Diddy moved in. One ex-employee, speaking anonymously, claimed that there were always stories, but no one wanted to be the one to say them out loud. The sheer gravity of the accusations emboldened others, and a pattern began to emerge, one of control, intimidation, and exploitation. The very charisma that had propelled Diddy to superstardom was now being recast as a weapon in a deeply manipulative persona. Legal analysts compared the case to other high-profile reckonings, such as those involving Harvey Weinstein and R. Kelly. But Diddy's case was different in one fundamental way: he hadn't yet been convicted, and unlike others who had faced cascading allegations after a single expose, Diddy's past was already well documented in public life. His name had surfaced in connection to violent incidents, including the 1999 nightclub shooting involving then-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez and rapper Shine, which resulted in Combs facing weapons charges, though he was later acquitted. To some, these earlier brushes with the law now appeared as red flags. To others, they were interpreted as evidence of a long-standing ability to evade accountability. In courtrooms and newsrooms alike, the question of accountability took center stage. Federal prosecutors emphasized the complexity of the case, noting that building a prosecutable case of this magnitude required months, if not years, of painstaking investigation. As new documents emerged detailing potential violations of the Mann Act, financial fraud, and conspiracy, experts noted that this wasn't merely a case about sexual abuse or trafficking. It was shaping up to be a deep dive into an alleged criminal enterprise masquerading as celebrity glamour. Meanwhile, public perception was split. Among Diddy's loyal fanbase, there remained a contingent that viewed the accusations as a smear campaign orchestrated to dismantle a successful black entrepreneur. Social media platforms became battlegrounds for competing narratives. Hashtags alternated between #survivingDiddy and #protectDiddy, reflecting a deep cultural rift about whom to believe and why. For many survivors of abuse, the case represented a vindication, proof that even the most powerful could be brought under scrutiny. For others, especially those nostalgic for the glory days of Bad Boy Records and 1990s hip-hop, the fall of Diddy was deeply personal, evoking a sense of betrayal and loss. Within the legal arena, Diddy's defense team deployed aggressive countermeasures. His attorneys filed motions to dismiss several claims, citing inconsistencies in testimony and challenging the jurisdiction of federal authorities. They also raised concerns about trial by media, accusing news outlets of poisoning the jury pool with sensationalized coverage. These arguments weren't entirely baseless. In an era dominated by the 24th of July news cycles and viral social media content, high-profile defendants faced unprecedented scrutiny before ever stepping foot in court. Still, the weight of evidence continued to grow. Investigators traced payments allegedly made to silence victims, reviewed security footage from Combs' multiple properties, and interviewed dozens of witnesses ranging from former employees to party guests. Each new layer peeled back seemed to reinforce the prosecution's narrative, that behind the extravagant image lay a tightly controlled environment where fear and manipulation were routine tools. Amidst this chaos, Diddy's inner circle appeared to fracture. Several former associates distanced themselves publicly, while others cooperated quietly with investigators. The loyalty that once surrounded him now seemed paper-thin. This shift was perhaps most evident in the testimonies of former security staff who described shadow protocols put in place at events to monitor guests, isolate certain individuals, and manage appearances. One even claimed there were internal lists of guests who were never to be left alone with Diddy. These revelations painted a chilling picture, one in which fame and surveillance coexisted in a delicate and sinister balance. Culturally, the saga prompted renewed conversations about celebrity worship, systemic abuse, and the moral compromises that often accompany fame. Media outlets dedicated panels and columns to the ethics of platforming alleged abusers. Was it right to continue streaming their music? Should awards be rescinded posthumously or retroactively? Were fans complicit by turning a blind eye to rumors that had persisted for decades? These questions, while not new, found renewed urgency in the wake of the Diddy investigation. In educational circles, sociologists and media theorists used the case as a lens through which to examine power dynamics in the entertainment industry. Diddy, once held up as a model of black excellence and business acumen, now represented a cautionary tale about the corruptive potential of unchecked power. His rise from intern to mogul was undeniably impressive, but so too was the system that allegedly allowed him to engage in exploitative behavior without meaningful consequences for years. As the trial date approached, tensions mounted across all fronts. Legal experts anticipated a protracted court battle, potentially involving multiple jurisdictions and a revolving door of witnesses. The logistics alone, coordinating testimonies across state lines, processing digital evidence, ensuring the safety of those who had come forward, were staggering. Yet, for many, the outcome of the trial was secondary to the cultural reckoning it had already sparked. Families of victims held quiet vigils, advocacy groups ramped up campaigns to support survivors of abuse in the entertainment industry, and lawmakers proposed new measures to hold powerful figures accountable. The ripple effects were wide and enduring. Whether Diddy would ultimately be convicted or not, the social tide had already turned. His once pristine legacy now lay under microscope, dissected by scholars, journalists, and the public with relentless intensity. At the same time, a broader question loomed. If this could happen to Diddy, who else in the entertainment world operated behind similar veils of secrecy and power? The Combs investigation seemed to open the floodgates. New stories surfaced about other industry titans. Agents, producers, and executives faced renewed scrutiny. The music industry, long accused of enabling predatory behavior, began to take tentative steps toward reform. Label heads discussed implementing third-party oversight for talent management. Artists quietly demanded contracts with clauses protecting them from exploitation and retaliation. The Combs case, in its complexity and spectacle, had become a catalyst for something larger, a potential restructuring of an industry that had, for too long, allowed power to insulate abuse. In private, those close to Diddy expressed sorrow, confusion, and anger. Some still couldn't reconcile the man they knew, the generous mentor, the visionary leader, with the allegations leveled against him. Others admitted they had seen warning signs, but lacked the courage to speak. The human toll of silence and complicity weighed heavily. In court, it was no longer just about guilt or innocence. It was about whether culture could evolve beyond the shadows that had defined it. As the trial commenced, the world watched with bated breath. Cameras flashed, reporters crowded the courthouse steps, and legal teams sparred over evidence and narrative. Inside, survivors told their stories, painful, detailed, unwavering. Outside, protesters held signs demanding justice, while others offered prayers for a man they still saw as misunderstood or wrongly accused. Regardless of the verdict, one truth was unmistakable: the age of invincibility for cultural icons was over. The notion that wealth and fame could shield individuals from accountability had been permanently challenged. And in the ashes of that illusion lay the hope that a more transparent,